10 years later.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike from Settling. And today I have with me two very special guests. If you are tuning in for the first time, Michael and I, we've been having these sessions every Saturday morning in the last 2 months plus now. And today we are actually stepping things up, going live from StreamYard so we can even broadcast to a larger audience base. And luckily, we have Richard with us today. I'm going to hand over to Michael now, as he is usually the chief host of this podcast series. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. We're pleased to have you join us at all our audience. That's it already. We're running behind schedule, and so we'll see go straight to the business for the day. Now, we'll be discussing racism in Europe versus discrimination back at home in Africa or whichever country where you're from, because we often hear racism in sports, racism in workplaces, in law enforcement, and back at home, racism and discrimination have a lot in common. We've invited Richard, who is graciously here to speak on this with us. And Richard has lived in Europe long enough, and also same with Michael, and they've also lived in Nigeria, in Africa. So they are in the best position to speak to us on on the subject for the topic for today. So, Richard, you're back at home. You hear of discrimination, ethnic divisions, political marginalization, and all of these issues. And you talk about employment. You are skilled. They say, "Where are you from?" And all of this. And now we hear from Europe. We say it's for. They say Balotelli. They call him monkey. They say this and all of this. What have you got to tell us about racism in Europe and discrimination back in Africa? Over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michael. And Mickey, as I like to call my the other Mike. So, because we've got two Mike here, so like we have to keep
I'm very sorry, please, Mr. Burris. I think it's good we clear this. I will be bearing Michael for the purpose of this program, and then why he bears Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
that's
to make
okay.
it easier for me, I just say Mickey to him, and then the other Mike is
Okay.
like. No, I mean, thanks a lot, Michael, all the both Michaels. This is really great to talk about this subject because, I mean, it's something that usually either we are not very courageous to talk about because, or sometimes people just feel, it's not a thing to talk about because it's
Yeah,
not really, it's a very spicy topic that you should not delve into because there's a thin line between saying someone is racist or you experience racist behavior or issues than and also being accused of something that you're not doing. So
hmm,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
again, it comes back to a question of how I
yeah,
perceive something and what the person is trying to communicate in his or her attitude, without
100%.
very fair.
necessarily wanting to to give that impression. So again, those thin lines are there, which makes
Yeah,
it a bit sometimes difficult to want to talk about those topics. But again,
Yeah,
it's great that you have the courage to want to dive into this conversation, and I'm happy to share maybe some insight and some ways that these things are experienced back here. But thank you for the invitation. Yeah, back to you, Mike.
yeah. Okay. You okay? Can you give us an experience of? Have you ever been subjected to any sort of racism? Have you experienced it before yourself?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to the issue of perception because,
yeah,
as I
yeah.
said earlier, it's like, I mean, I've lived here, as you mentioned, for over 9 years, getting to 10. And in many ways, I've experienced different situations that could be interpreted or misinterpreted in different ways.
Yeah.
It depends on how you take those issues. I wouldn't say I haven't been subjected to situations that makes me feel different from the people with whom I live here. How I take it, how I interpret it, how I relate with that can be also different.
Yeah.
One of the things, a very clear example that we get, as you mentioned, I was just coming back from the UK just a few days ago, and the people before me went through with that problem. And then
Yeah.
I just passed through the machine. I was very sure because of where I traveled. I know all the rules like at the back of my thumb. So I rarely make mistake with the security checks. But then
Mm-hmm.
I did everything, checked my pocket, everything is clear, have no bed, nothing, no chain, nothing. And then I go through the machine and it's like beep 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 beep. I'm like, what the fuck? And they're like, hey, stand there. Sorry for the F word. And then they tell me, like, oh, okay, like you have to stand like that. And then I have to stand open my arms, and like the guy went everywhere checking. And then I see on the screen like there are like some dotted spots where probably I could hide some arms, you know. So in my head, the first thing that came is it because I'm black? Because why should the machine pick me up like that and then have me search in this way like all over, you know? And that for me was a bit disturbing. It didn't happen to the white people before me, but it happened to me, and it's not the first time it's happening. Do I take that as racist? It can be. But on the other hand, too, if you look at antecedents or situations that have happened in the past, maybe they have some reasons to believe that, okay, you need to do some random checks on a few selected black people. It happens to fall on me. I could consider it as racism or not. Two, sometimes it's like this, the systems are not built to recognize us in a way. So if you talk, for example,
Yeah.
something that is very common is you see the iPhone. When you have the iPhone and you take a picture with a black man and a white man, you need a special angle to get a clearer picture of a black person. The white person, you don't need to make any effort at all. It's just back, and you have a very beautiful picture of the person. But as black, like it has to be positioned to get the light angle of the light. Otherwise, it's either you get the background or you get the person. So you cannot choose the two. Um,
Yeah.
but is this racism? It's just like they're not paying attention to it, you know. So they
Okay,
just
so
kind of
if I get you right
perception
now,
of
I think
policing that is not maybe probably not intentional. But of course, I have no doubt. I mean, to be honest, that there are no racist situations. There are. Sometimes they are very subtle. You don't see it every day. It's not put in your face. But sometimes, even in some situations, they are like right there, and you can really pinpoint that this is a racist act. But it does exist. How proliferated is it is a different question.
Mhm.
But there are also systems that help you to go through them. Sorry,
But
I spoke a lot here.
if I may just add, I guess maybe we should first start by defining what is racism, because that would actually help to understand the different cases, when it happens to people, because there should be a differentiation or at least a definition of racism versus discrimination. And also simply not paying attention to certain things. Because what you talked about, the iPhone, and then plus your experience at the airport, it could be associated with technology, because for example, I don't think Apple would genuinely not want their phone to be optimal for Africans or black people. They are losing the market share. I don't think they care about who uses the phone. They would want the phone to be optimal for every user, black or white. But then for whatever reason, for the kind of data they trained the phone with and so on, they just did not pay attention to all the target audience, for example. This is also now likened to the case of AI today. If you use most AI tools to generate images, um, when you, I did one some time ago, I wanted to optimize the image of my son, and the way he came out, I just could not stand that picture. And the thing in that case, I mean, we would not, I don't think one would think about that as racism, but it's just, so yeah, the kind of data that the AI was trained on. So yeah,
Exactly.
maybe we could just start first by defining what is racism versus discrimination, and then take it up from there. And we can actually pinpoint some specific cases where we experienced it or did not experience it, and just get a clearer perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Michael. Again, that's why I was also saying that there's this issue of thin line between what people perceive as racism and what could actually be racism. Again, it's like sometimes having this definition put clearly in place can help in this direction, but it
Yeah.
doesn't change the fact that I feel different, you know. But
Yeah.
it's those kind of differences that are uh, anchored on the racial difference that people
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And when you have a treatment that is based on your race or ethnic difference that you have with others, this can be turned at racism in whatever case. It
Yeah.
can be a discriminative act. It can
Yeah.
also just be the issue of classification. For
Yeah.
example, in France, there are questions like about race and differences that you're not allowed to ask in an official form. For example, like
Yeah.
having to ask people uh, their racial background because
Yeah.
it's perceived like you could be using it for
Racial
discrimination,
profiling.
but
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a question of statistics
Yeah.
because of the history that people have had with racism and with treatment based on their racial differences.
Yeah.
Um, they kind of try to shy away from that and
Yeah.
say, do not ask this question. But telling the people not to ask that question, does that solve the problem? Because it actually, those differential treatment based on race still exists, you
Yeah.
know, which could be discriminatory, which could may not, just it's a question of statistics, or a question of creating difference to know if you have to give specific treatment or not. Whether those treatments are positive or negative is a different question, you know. Uh,
100%.
and again, I do agree with you. The point you said about iPhone, it's like okay, it's a question. I mean, it's like some honest mistakes or something that they don't pay attention to. And to be honest, again, when you have most of this technological piece, maybe from biased background, sometimes you get more feedback from people who live here because they know, like, they want optimal performance, so they'll like complain to the technical service or the support, like, okay, improve this system, and it's
Yeah.
improved and works in their favor. But we just take what we get and just go with it. So I don't
100%.
think anyone has complained about this. Like I haven't complained myself about having an iPhone that is not optimal when you take a black person and a white person's picture. You know, but normally, if I want those kind of improvement, it's probably part of my commitment and responsibility to signal this to the provider and say, I see this difference. Is this something that is intentional, or you want to improve on it? You know,
Yeah.
so that's the
100%.
thing.
Yeah.
But again, to clearly go back to your point about defining racism, is it's those treatment that are based on your race. And race could be like where you come from, a black or white or Caucasian or Asian or whatever. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. And to bring it to perspective, racism is a very serious issue. Like some places have had to change their football club in Europe because of the way the fans respond to them. And in so many times, like we've heard of inequalities. You can't go to some places naturally. You can't take certain positions. You can't, like what we are experiencing in Nigeria. There was a story of this Aisha Mohammed, who is now with the UN. She was penned down for a political appointment as a minister. I think she's from Gombe, but she's married to her husband, is here more somewhere. And the people say, no, this one can't represent her. She's not from here. But naturally, based on our tradition, when you get married, you're not from the place of your husband. But
Yeah.
when it's time for political appointment, she was asked to go back to her own state before she could become a minister. This is discrimination at home, which is even more obvious than we're talking about the picture quality on iPhone. It is somebody who is already full that can be talking about whether the food is sweet or not very tasty.
Yeah, I
So
think I completely agree with you, Mike. Again, it comes back to questions of systemic issues. Like, again, what I said about Europe, it's like subtle in Europe. It's not defined the system naturally is built to prevent against this. And if you
Yeah.
see most of the official system, they try to prevent anything that brings about discrimination. Now I
Oh,
work currently on some European funded projects. One of the key questions that they ask is that you have to prove that your actions or your project does not have any element of discrimination of people who are marginalized or whatever. And you have to prove that by the work you're doing, you try to include everyone. It's a compulsory question that everyone who is involved in European institutions or European projects have to prove that they are not discriminating in their actions.
Yeah.
But in Nigeria, even that becomes like something that is systemized. For example, the issues of political zoning. We
mhm.
kind of put like um, differences ahead of meritocracy. Like we don't focus on the merit, we focus on where people come from, first of all, and then we'll say, okay, is it qualified? Yes, but where is it from? Or where is she from? And that's a vivid example of what you said about Aisha Muhammad. Like, because she has a Mohammed name, like, this does not represent Nigeria that much because she's from Gombe. It has to be someone from the east, from the north, from the west, from the central, you know. And the system works like that, and they tell you it's federal character. Why federal
Yes.
character is good, why federal character could be good, it has to be used in a way that does not discriminate against other. But what I see today, it's more like system that is built to
Okay, so,
naturally
yeah,
differentiate.
Richard, you made a very strong point there. You talked about a system in Europe that tend to discourage discrimination or racism or whatever. Racism is also a form of discrimination. But
Yeah,
now you also mentioned that in Nigeria it tends to be systemized, or the system tend to foster it. And I think you can speak more on this. You have been in Europe, because that's what I'm saying. It is somebody who has eaten to their full that will now remember that the food is not tasty enough.
yeah,
You are be likely to, because what you guys called, the question. There's a question to the topic. They say which is worse. Now, your own understanding. You've spent enough time in Europe. Michael also included. I think you've been in Nigeria. If you had to choose between the racism of the Europe and the discrimination of back at home, which would you prefer? Which would you choose?
Should I go? Maybe I could
yeah.
just go
Let's go,
first.
Michael.
Yeah.
This is
So,
nice.
let's say I had the choice to choose one. I definitely would
Yeah,
choose the one in Europe because you can fight it. At least you have the option to fight it, and then
yeah,
there are systemic strategies put in place to prevent it, like Richard mentioned. So,
yeah,
one were to choose, then definitely Europe, and which is quite interesting because the same people. Well, it's not actually the people who complain about racism are the ones that promote discrimination back home. Because the people that promote the discrimination back home, when you look closely, are the leaders, the government, and they don't feel what the everyday people feel. They are diplomats. They can go anywhere in the world. They have free passes and stuff. So they don't actually experience what the everyday people experience. And even if they do in some cases, it's kind of strange that think about a typical politician in Africa, in Nigeria. They go abroad, they experience something good. The logical thing would be to have that back home for your people, for yourself, so you don't have to travel far. But instead, they keep going to that same abroad to experience that thing. Like,
Yeah,
where's the sense in that? Why
yeah.
not have it back home? And I think this is where everything just, it's like, where are we going to solve this from, you know?
Mm, mm,
So
yeah,
yeah, over to Richard, please.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah,
over to Richard, please, before to provide some perspective again and to give this in some direction.
yeah.
One day, this orphanage in Utupo, there's an orphanage, this one in Utupo. We went to visit the orphanage. I saw some children living outside the orphanage, and I saw the ones living in the orphanage. And I saw that the children living outside the orphanage were like longing to be in the orphanage. Because it seems as if the children in the orphanage were living in better conditions. They had better beds, they had TV to watch, and they had
Yeah.
food. But the ones who are outside with their parents with them, they don't. I don't think they're not entitled to these things are not assured for them, guaranteed. And I said, okay, that was when I discovered that not every orphan is in the orphanage. So, and not every orphan is fatherless or motherless. So now, bring this into perspective. This is Europe, where they give you good transportation, they give you all the amenities you have access to, and when they say, no, you can't sit here, it becomes an issue. But whereas at home, even in your local government, there are things you can never become. So, can you help us provide shed some light on this, please?
Yeah, I mean, you both are completely right. And again, this is the question. Like in Europe, it's true. We feel watched and feel questioned for being, for example, black, for being different,
Yeah,
for being who you are.
yeah,
There's a way that makes you know, even as perfect as the system would be,
yeah,
that
yeah,
you're different, that
yeah,
you're not
yeah,
from here, but
yeah,
that does not mean you cannot access services.
yeah.
And if I come back to your question about if I have to choose between one or not, I would probably not fall into the temptation of choosing, because because also I don't want to give an impression that one differential treatment or racist or discriminated treatment is better than the other. They are both bad.
But if you
That's
had to choose one, but if you had to choose one,
if you put a knife
if
on
you
my
have to
neck,
choose one,
if you put a knife on my neck and said I have to choose, I mean, I probably will. We told the line of Michael, who said like there are systemic structures in place to help you fight the one here, unlike where the one back home is kind of like it is what it is. You take what you get, and that's what you hear. It's that bad that you see that this thing is not right, and someone tells you this is Niger. You have to take what you get. Why should I take what I get? Here, I don't take what I get. I question what I get. Back home, I probably could question it, but it remains as a level of questioning. And there's not much I could do about it, which is
And
bad,
there's
really.
some extent to which you can question. You don't question too much.
It depends on who you're questioning as well.
yeah, hmm
So question your questioning.
Exactly. Who are you to question this? Uh,
exactly.
so yeah, again, just to give an analogy of what the airport scenario again. For example, when I come to the airport, you see on the screen every time a European passport or French passport, and then all other passports. And the European passport is like systemized, it's like digitalized. You don't need to go before someone else. You just need to scan the machine with your passport. It takes a picture of your face, and off you go. In the other passports, you have to queue a lot and wait for the agent who is there, and he's going to question you: where are you from, what are you doing here, where did you go to, how long were you there, those evasive questions that a machine doesn't ask you. Just scan your passport and you just walk away.
Yeah.
Again, this is like not discrimination, it's how they built their own system to make
Yeah,
sure they control who comes and go out.
yeah,
But me living here for so long, if I am subjected to that kind of system of like not having European passport, I could say it's racism, right? But then
yeah,
if the officer there even question me in a way that I don't like, I can raise it up to the
Yeah.
system and say I've been unfairly treated, and
Yeah.
it treated genuinely. This is
yeah.
Yeah.
where you see like, okay, there are systems to fight
Yeah.
any form of discrimination, racist
And,
or
and
otherwise.
I think again the good side of what you're saying is when you come to join this queue over there in Europe, there is nothing like this place has been reserved for this honorable social person. You all join the queue. If I came before you,
Except
I
if you
joined
are a
the queue.
diplomat. Except if you are a diplomat. Then you
Yeah.
can have a different way.
Yeah.
But if you're
Yeah.
not a diplomat, then everyone goes on the same line. There's no
Yeah.
saying, Oga, Mr. This,
Yeah.
Doctor that. No,
Yeah.
uh,
O-
that doesn't work. But then
Okay.
in Nigeria, what I see is like you could be limited by just a simple question of where you come from, or
100%.
or the region where you come from, the ethnic group where you belong to. Even in my own
Yeah,
state, which is like supposed to be like one family, There are certain people who cannot be governor in my state.
Yeah.
And there are certain people who cannot occupy certain commissioner
That
positions.
is naturally, there are things you can never become.
You can never become. So for the fact
that's
that I come
crazy.
from that place, as of today, 2025, I cannot dream of becoming a governor.
Yeah.
Except if something changes in the next couple of years, but as of today, it wasn't possible.
And
And
okay,
kind
Richard,
of
please, if
crazy
I
to
may
think
come.
that in 2025 you have this kind of system.
Okay,
And
Richard,
no
now,
one is questioning it.
if I may come in very quickly, if I may come in very quickly. Now, this same Richard who cannot become a governor in his village or in his state in Nigeria can become a leader of a party in UK, can become a mayor in a certain place in Europe and all that. Because we are seeing
100%.
Africans becoming political leaders in Europe and even America. Well,
100%.
we saw Obama become the president of Kenya. If it were to be in Africa, they will dig into your forefathers. And I just told you how Aisha Mohammed could not become a minister because she's from,
Yeah, yeah,
she was asked to go back to her home state and not her husband's state. But when you are a wife, they say our wife. But when it's time for certain appointments where that discriminate, the discrimination here is cruel and cruel.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
now,
completely right.
so,
Yeah.
so if I'm saying, do you think we are being oversensitive on the issue of racism rather than focus on the discrimination back at home? Do you think that is what is happening? Are we
I mean,
overcoming
I
racism
mean,
and overlooking
again,
discrimination?
yeah, yeah. Sorry, Mike, I take this, and if you want to chip in,
Sure.
you yeah.
Go
Yeah,
for it.
The thing is, I mean, it's important to focus on the issues because when we come here, also the impression that we have from back home is everything is perfect, you know. And so when
yeah,
you come into a system and you see some differences that does not align with the image that you have, I think it's important to address it, and focusing on it can help us to clean up the system. However, we should not forget where we come from and the things that are happening there, and there needs to also make an effort to address those issues. But then I think there's a lot of work that needs to still be done because I remember a couple of months ago or last year when there was the uh, end bad governance protest. Many people, many Nigerians who were living abroad were targeted because the fact that they were supporting terrorist acts in Nigeria because they were supporting, maybe some of them were supporting the protest to end bad governance.
Yeah.
And governance thought like this protest is against government and terrorist acts and tagged a lot of those people living abroad as funding terrorism back home, which has nothing to do with that. Because you just want a better country where I go home and I'm happy to be back home and not complain about every damn thing that I experience, you know.
yeah.
So I agree with you. We can talk so much about racism here, but also forget that there were a lot of things that we need to fix back home. But there's also a thin line. Do we have the capacity and the possibility to be able to do that? Because someone would tag us as funding terrorism and could put us in a more difficult situation.
Oh,
Or
okay, are you talking about a situation of give the dog a bad name then? Give the dog a bad name so that you can have it taken off the way. Okay, Michael, over to you now. I
Yeah.
understand based on survey that I have read through. They say that Germany and Austria have reported the highest number of racism incidences in recent years, the last 5 years. That Austria and Germany are the worst places to live when you talk about racism. Can you confirm this?
Confirm this. Well, I mean, if I were to say yes or no, the default response is going to be no for sure. Because again, racism is it's something of it's subjective.
I missed your default response. What did you say?
So if I were to say yes or no, my default response would be no.
Okay.
First and foremost, because um, I mean, racism it's subjective. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
People can be idiots, people can be assholes, people can be disrespectful, and you find this everywhere.
Yeah.
So, what is the basis of that particular survey of the responses that the people gave? You know, um, and who did it to you? Where did it happen? There are some acts that are very obvious. You know, this is racism. We could touch on what's happening between the Trump administration and white South Africans. That is classic. It's just plain. You see it there. Say, okay, we take all the white guys, we bring them to the US, we give them everything that they need. We don't care about the black people.
Yeah.
You
Mm.
don't need anyone to tell you any. This is government versus whatever doing that. That's obvious. But if someone approaches you on the street and they are disrespectful to you, a bus driver, a train driver, or someone did something to you, I would just classify that as some assholes who's an idiot and something, you know. So that's what I would say about that. But does racism exist? It 100% does. But again, it's subjective. Personally, I cannot recall where I was uh, treated unfairly because of my color, my passport, or something like that. No, there's a system that works, and there are rules and regulation, you know. And not to forget also that the government here strategically puts measures to avoid this. Now, does it mean it does not exist? Of course it does. There are political parties that are more inclined to that direction. You know, like currently in Germany, the AfD, and then also a similar party in Austria. But again, still within this thing, it still comes down to individuals. But say at the broader level from the government, um, you cannot really find it to say, okay, hey, they are discriminating against these people. Because at the end of the day, everyone gets an equal chance, an equal opportunity, and you see people still thriving. And I think it's fair that you do not see say a significant amount of black people within government positions because what's even the percentage of Africans in Germany or in Austria in the first place? So it takes time, you know, and these are countries that have been built for no, not centuries. For example, if you look around the transport system, you'll see there are some small transport system here. They are celebrating 100 years of operation. 100 years of operation, like just their local transport system. Some of them
Uninterrupted operations.
uninterrupted operation. 100 years. So
Yeah.
this is like, and I mean, 100 years ago, how many Africans or black people were living here? Normally, it was a different world back then. So my point again is this: it's subjective, and does it exist? It 100% does, but I'm not sure what's the basis of that survey, and my default response would be no.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I completely agree with you, Michael. Again, that's what I was saying at the beginning when I said the it's a question of perception. You know, again, true, it does exist, as the case may be in every part of the world. It's not just here in Europe, even in Africa. I think that even like what can be completely referred to as racism, but also ethnic differences and all that.
Yeah.
They exist, and but is it systemized is a different case, and how people perceive some of these situations can call to question what can actually be termed racism or not. But yes, both exist, and in both cases, Africa or here, I think both of these kind of discriminative acts stifles potentials, and the question is not choosing which one is better, is but how do we combat both?
Oh,
Because
okay. Now, okay. Now,
yeah,
I know what I know what is bad, but you know in Nigeria we would always say when you are caught in between a lesser evil. So it's a case of a lesser
That's
evil.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you must choose between two evil, you consider the one that is less evil. That's just what we try to. But all of them are bad. Now let's. I would like to
yeah, but
conclude because
that's a problem, Michael. Why can't we choose between two goods? You know, if I wish we have two goods to choose between, and we choose the better. You know, but we are always caught in a situation where we have two evils and we have to choose the lesser evil. It's unfortunate, but that's our reality. You know.
Even in our elections, that has been the case. You always have two candidates that you are forced to choose from one, and you can't say I won't choose anyone because one must be your leader at that point in time. So,
100%. One of the
100%.
leaders.
okay. So now, please, I like you. I want you to educate me on this. I have been thinking to know what exactly is the difference between racism and discrimination because they are both discrimination, they are both exclusion, issues of inclusion and exclusion, and all that are deniers or inequalities. So, what exactly is racism? Is it just about the color? Because of color, could that be the only difference?
Yeah, I mean it's basically a difference that is based on race, and race is like come from
Yeah,
which
yeah, yeah,
qualified or codified under colors or whatever.
yeah,
But discrimination can be a bit more large and
yeah,
covers
yeah,
even the way you dress,
yeah,
the where you come from, what you study. I mean, if you go to the corporate world, if you come from Harvard and myself who come from some crazy schools that have no global name,
yeah,
when people talk to you, the difference, you can see the difference in a
yeah,
corporate,
yeah,
because he comes from Harvard, he comes from Oxford, he
yeah,
comes
yeah,
from Columbia. These are known names in the corporate world. So the way they talk to you is different from someone who comes from Benue State University or some Ahmad Benue University. Even in Nigeria, someone who comes from UNN and someone who comes from Ibadan, it's like they are not the same place on the same level. So
Yeah.
those
yeah.
can be discriminatory in a way.
Okay,
But
so
if those discriminations are based on your color,
yeah,
on the
yeah,
race or
yeah,
the part of the world where you
yeah.
come from, then it can turn racism. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. I'm looking at the time. I want to see if we can finish up here by little 41 minutes for the video. So the next 4 minutes, what are we going to say about that? Racism and discrimination. What? Or do you agree with Richard?
Um, so racism falls under discrimination for sure. Discrimination is broader,
Yeah,
and you can
yeah.
experience that at different level, different settings, different organization, countries, and all. So
Yeah.
what was the question again?
Yeah, you wanted to
Yeah,
differentiate
because
between.
to differentiate between racism and discrimination, because they're all discrimination. So I don't think there's any difference. That's the question anyway.
Well, we can just think about it that one is a subset of the other. So
Oh,
racism
oh,
is a subset of discrimination.
oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay, okay, that's fine. So let's give our last because we have to conclude now. Do you think if I'm to travel to Europe, I don't know because do you think Nigerians have been or Africans have been so disturbed by this actual distinction? Because considering where you are coming from, it's like your father was a very hostile person, and then you go to your uncle. Maybe your father beats you 12 times a day, your uncle beats you 5 times a day. Do you have anything to worry about? So if an African is traveling to Europe, we don't really have to be bothered about racism, considering the discrimination that is meted on them. So yes, please.
Like practically speaking, they should not be bothered because they've faced tougher situations. It could
Yeah,
not be worse here. That's what I can say. You could not experience, tougher discrimination, and that's because of the current situation back home. Yeah, hopefully in the future things get better, that we would be treated better back home, and then it's
yeah.
worse here. But I think, considering where we are today in 2025, you could not be treated worse than where you came from. And if that would be the case, then don't come to Europe.
Okay, Richard, you have been
Yeah.
here before. I know you are there for about 10 years now. Do you think things are worse there in terms of racism as compared to distribution back at home? If you don't want to choose yes or no between one of them, what?
Yeah, I see you trying to roll me into this choosing between yes or no. I'm not falling for the temptation, Michael. So I mean, I completely agree with Michael, like with Mickey. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It couldn't be worse, you know.
Yeah,
And but then again, I want to still emphasize the fact that any form of discrimination is condemnable and is unacceptable, be it at home or here.
yeah,
But again, going back, cycling back to what I said in the beginning about perception, I think sometimes the closedness of our mind makes us to see every
Yeah.
differential treatment as being qualified as discrimination or something different.
Yeah.
When we keep an open mind, we are able to understand that sometimes these things are not necessarily to discriminate against us, but it's also made to protect their
Yeah.
own system, you know.
Yeah.
However, when you see something, as they say in the UK, see something, say something, sorted. You
Yeah.
see what you feel is like discriminatory, you have to say it. And if you say it to the system that is concerned, it will get sorted. Back home, we
Mm.
probably don't have those structures yet. And I
Yeah.
think this is what many of us back here, but also most importantly, really, most importantly, those back home needs to combat to put in place system that works, that protects them,
Yeah.
that create opportunity for
No,
everyone. And I repeat, everyone, irrespective
yeah.
of where they come
I
from,
must,
what they believe in, and which political party they align
yes,
with.
I must say that I like your open-mindedness. I like your open-mindedness because they say life is what you make of it. So, by
Absolutely.
the definition
Absolutely.
of an instance, even insult, for somebody to insult you is an intention. It is an insultee that makes insult real. Because insult is an intention. If I say waka, I want to make you feel bad. So when you feel bad, you make the circle complete. But if you
Yeah, that's
smile
right.
and say, wow,
That's
then
right.
that's it. So open-mindedness is it plays a very serious role in all of this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, then and
You
then
probably have seen one of the viral video recently of Lady Gaga or someone
yeah,
who shouted like, "Yeah, you going to hell?" And she walked up to the person and said, "I wouldn't say what she did, but she did something," and told the person, "You're coming with me." You know.
yeah.
So
So
she
you can
could
see
take
that,
it like, "I start fighting. Why did you say I'm going to hell?"
yeah,
Like insult
yeah,
and
You know,
raise a case against the person, but simply
yeah,
she said, "You coming with me." So
yeah.
irrespective what you do, I don't take it as she
It
insulted
ends
me.
there,
Just
and it ends
just get
there.
back. Yeah.
exactly.
And so, that very lastly, for the very last time, when you were talking, there was something I got that some of this reaction or treatment that we get, that we earned it, if I may say, that we cost it.
Yeah.
Because it's a case of once bitten, twice shy. They are trying to be extremely careful because knowing what we are capable of. So, do you think that some of this treatment that we get, that we consider ourselves, that we that we go to interpret as racism?
Unfortunately, yes and no. Again, unfortunately, most of it is like sometimes we cost them because, again, as I mentioned earlier about the treatment I get, sometimes it's also because of what people before me have done, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
why each time I do something, I take my race, my people, my country, the image of where I come from with me, because I believe that if I do this, other people will be unjustly treated because of
oh,
the
yeah,
act that I perpetrate. So I'm
yeah,
very careful about how I comport myself because I want people to see
yeah,
me as a Nigerian that is good and therefore consider that Nigerians are good rather than
yeah.
Yeah.
see me as a Nigerian that is bad and consider that every Nigerian that comes after me is bad. So
Yeah.
I
Very,
think
very important.
those kind of representative behavior that gives the better image of where we come from is very important to create a better landscape and a better opportunity for those who comes after us. So
And
yes,
that's
some of us
Michael.
create those
Okay,
issues
Michael. Yes,
that
thank you
lead
so
us
much.
to the difference. Yeah.
Very correct. Not making life difficult for others from your attitude. So, Michael, from what I said, what is your own position on that?
So, what was the question again?
I said now, do you think that some of the treatments, the reactions we get, okay, do you think that we cost it, that it is earned rather than just we interpreting it as racism? Because somebody has to protect the integrity of their territory, they have to protect their system and all that. So don't you
Yeah.
think we are the cost of some of these things that we interpret as racism?
Yeah, unfortunately, the actions are usually reactions to past events or perceived future
Yeah,
happenings,
yeah,
but to a large extent based on past events. So I've had experience here in Germany multiple times. You try to go to a nightclub and they tell you, no, we don't let you in. And you ask why? We've had bad experience. Literally, we've had bad experience. So
yeah,
one could argue to say, no, they have been racist. But
Yeah.
frankly speaking, I can also confirm that they have had bad experience because other times I was there and I also saw what happened, you know.
Mm.
So I wouldn't say we earned it, but it's like the people that get certain treatment in most cases is as a result of past experience
Yeah.
from people who look similar to them. However, we have to understand that it is not that simple because to really solve this, we go back several centuries where when everyone was in their forest and the disruption started, before everything changes. So it's actually deeper than just saying, hey, you caused it, you earned it, or whatever. Because at the end of the day, it's like the whole globalization is actually the root cause of what we're experiencing today and the differentiation that we get. Of course, extending also to racism and all. Um, but today, in many cases, it's always as a result of past experience, and now they're trying to contain it, not to, or rather, they're trying to control it to avoid what happened before. But I just want to emphasize that it's not that simple to say, okay, hey, it's because of past experience. Because why did that past experience happen in the first place? You keep tracing
Yeah.
backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's fine. So I think we this is about the session is already into 46 minutes. Let it not be too long. Richard, thank you so much. Next weekend, tomorrow
Yeah,
is a
maybe
great
just
finale.
one concluding words before you can conclude.
Okay, let's conclude. You can conclude that.
Yeah, because I know the major cause of this is to understand which is worse and the differences.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
again, I still want to cycle it back to the fact that discrimination in whatever form, across
yeah,
border or across state lines, ethnicity and all, it's bad, and it's kind of destroyed the trust fabrics that we have. And
yeah,
so what we should focus on is not whether to understand those differences, even if it's small. It's very important that we combat it, and building a systems that include rather than exclude is
yeah.
better and will make our world a better place, be it in Nigeria, be it in France, be it in Germany, in Austria, in whatever we may be. So I think everyone who is listening to this and who has a potential to do something to create a system that include rather than exclude, irrespective of where we come from, should do their bit to make sure we have a society where we are not talking about racial or ethnic or religious or whatever difference the case may
Yeah.
be. So, but thank you
Thank you
for
so
this opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard. I like your position. You have insisted on taking a position that says, no, I can't choose between any of them. They are both bad, and it is what it is. So we have to frown at the both of them. Thank you so much. Michael, sorry, please, Michael, I'm coming to you. Richard, where are you watching the game for next Sunday? Majority of the leagues are ending tomorrow, and it's going to be top four finish. The fight for top four in England is real, is mad, is massive. So where are you going to be over the weekend?
Well, I'll be back here in Paris, so I'll be watching it here from Paris. Unfortunately, I couldn't watch it live in the stadium, but yeah, tickets are
Okay.
crazy. Tickets are
Uh,
crazy.
all right. All right. So much. Michael, what to you? Your last comment, please.
Yeah, so about the football, I don't watch football. I have no idea what's happening in that
I'm
space.
not talking about football to you. I'm not talking about football, Michael. I don't
But
discuss football with you.
just to touch on that, the interesting thing about when you say football is, I'm a co-founder of a football consulting agency in Berlin.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my other two colleagues, the other two co-founders, they are 100% in football. So Paul is he's a football trainer and coach with Hertha Tillendorf, a professional club in Berlin. And then CJ is also a sports enthusiast. So good stuff. My part there is,
Please, if I may just come in. Now, I know you've been doing a lot in that regard, and racism and sports go hand in hand. We see that because when they throw banana at people and all that, it is full blown when it comes to sport. So, what promise would you be given to those that you are getting your like football scout? You technically want like something like a football scout, and all that you work with your collaborate with a lot of other guys. So, and just also let our audience know that Michael is. Can you speak more on this? Why you conclude, please?
yeah, for sure. So
Yeah.
Settling first and foremost is connecting young Africans to global opportunities. We want to
Yeah.
get them closer to global opportunities. And one of the key issues is lack of information. There's no trusted platform that really focuses on connecting key people in the migration space, giving them
Yeah.
information, connecting them to other peers, but very importantly, that they can learn from the experience of other people and not just hear what who says what or what you just get on Google. And then of course access to verified service providers. So that's the primary aim of settling. And now we know that on the European soil, when it comes to football, Africans have been one of the key, suppliers of the most talented footballers, globally speaking.
Mm.
One of my, I don't know if I would call that cultural shock or whatever. When I came to Germany at first, when I say I'm Nigerian, the first thing is, do you know JJ Okocha? Do you know Kanu? Football just gives Nigerians such great reputation in Germany
Yeah.
and most likely other parts of Europe. And everyone
Yeah.
just expected that naturally I'm a good
You should
footballer.
know. Yeah.
And I swear. So that's the idea. You're Nigerian, you're African, and then there's that good reputation when it comes to football. And now
Yeah.
the question, the problem now is I think each of us can identify to how many talents that we know are back home, but their dreams just died because they did not have the right resources, which includes information, people, networking, and all.
Yeah.
So this was how scoring was formed. Scoring is just the word score and then in with the double N. And
Mm.
what we're simply doing is we're leveraging on that migration network of settling to help young African players become professional footballers in Germany. And frankly speaking, the process is with zero risk for all the players. Why? Because scoring does not charge you a dime for any of what it offers to you, any of the services. No, we give you clearly the right information that you need, and we guarantee 100% that once you work with us to get to Germany, that thing which you need the most, which is a trial in a club, you will get it from us because this is what we guarantee. What every young player needs is a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't, you know, we we cannot guarantee that the club will take you, but we guarantee that we will get you, several trials until the club takes you.
Okay, Michael. So maybe in one of these live sessions, we are going to be just dedicating the entire time to the scoring and all that you're into and settling and all that. So maybe you could just conclude on our conversation for today, and then
Yeah,
one of these subsequent Saturdays we could dedicate it to discussing scoring and how you're collaborating with other football
for sure.
scouts too.
Yeah, just in conclusion, to also connect back to what Richard said,
Yeah.
if you're moving abroad, be it Europe or wherever, please wait for your own experience to happen. Don't take the
Mm.
experience of other people and put it in front of you because that's
Mm.
exactly what you see everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Um, I can testify from my personal experience that in some cases people were disrespectful to me, but I did not
Yeah.
see that as racism or discrimination. They were simply assholes. In
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would say most of the cases, my experience has been good, and just come with an open mind, respect other people, pay attention to the details, and be a
Yeah.
bit more reserved until you understand the system. Then you're in a better
Right.
position to say what happened to you was this or that.
Right.
But don't come with
Right.
other people's experience in front of you because that's exactly what you get.
Yeah, and so as we would say in Nigeria, don't go to do pass yourself. When you get to
So,
Europe, don't just start overshading yourself. Don't go do pass yourself. Understand the
yeah,
context first. Understand
yeah,
the environment. Understand the people, their culture, their way of life before you change yourself. Don't go to a club and scatter the whole place because Michael may want to go back there tomorrow. And
and they tell me no bad experience.
so, like, and also Richard said something very important. He said he's always mindful of his actions and inactions because he considers those who will be coming after him. When you go, if you manage to go over there, don't go and mess up the name of your country. Don't make matters difficult for other people who will be coming after you. It's very, very important because
Yeah,
sometimes we have to own up and take responsibility for what we do and what we fail to do. And we
mhm,
know that it's not about throwing because they like they say, you're not responsible for what happens to you, but you're also responsible for responses. And also so we have to balance everything and make sure that we're at our best before you cannot begin to speak really of racism after you make sure that you've you've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's properly. Yeah, and I think at this point we could leave it for today. We can. It's inexhaustible, but somehow we'll come back to this again. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
100%.
Richard, for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Really appreciate your
Pleasure.
presence here today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming.
thanks, Richard. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
All
Okay,
right.
bye, guys.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.
Okay.
Bye. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.